Welcome. This is Hakeem Alexander. You're listening to Hypno-Athletics, Exercising Your Mind. And this is called the InterNet Theory of Mind. I gave it that title because of something else that I was thinking about, an analogy or comparison of the human mind to the internet, but it's actually a lot more simple than that. I was just thinking about how up until now we didn't have the technology available that was developed to fully describe how the human mind works. A lot of people are confused about how the mind works. We don't really know. I don't know. But there are a lot of theories, and there are a lot of workable theories. Workable theories meaning that there are theories that you can work off of that consistently help you get the results that you desire. And that's always what we're looking for, is what works the best to help us get the results that we want in our lives. So right into it here, there's a story that comes from indigenous peoples, and I'm completely paraphrasing here for for use in my explanation here. And the reason why we need to understand more about how the mind works, again, must establish this is so that we can get results. There's not a whole lot of people who want to fail in life, who really truly want to fail in life and feel sad instead of joyful, who want to be sick instead of healthy, who want to be poor in many different ways rather than wealthy. We all want to do our best for the most part, so this is for those people, and this is why these explanations are important, because the more that we understand the way that our minds work, the more that we can control our behaviors for successful habits. Now, there are successful people who don't know these mechanisms and the intricacies of how these things work, and they're working on unconscious competence or subconscious competence. They have behaviors that have been programmed in them from a very young age that they are operating from, that they're getting the results. But that's not everyone. That's not most people. Most people have not been raised well, unfortunately. And, I work with children a lot, and so I can see exactly how, for example, things that I say to the kids, they repeat the next week and the week after. They're like little sponges. So again, let's get into this, though. This is a very important explanation here about what I'm calling the internet theory of mind for now. And so there's an indigenous story from the North American continent, I believe it comes from, where there's an elder talking to maybe his son or grandson or something like that, and he says, within every person there are two wolves, one evil wolf and one good wolf, or one bad wolf and one good wolf, and they're constantly fighting. And then the child, or whoever the mentee, who the chief or the village elder is talking to, so the child asks, so which one is going to win, or which one wins? Because the elder says that they're constantly fighting. And he says, so which one's going to win? He says, the one that you feed. Okay, the one that you feed. And so this is very interesting because, I had also been researching for a long time the mechanisms of the mind, the theory of mind, and everything like that. And one of the things a few years ago I did, like 2007, 2008, on a internet radio, blog talk radio, for a show called Karma Cafe, which I got the idea from much earlier, from books and publications from as early as 1910, and then even that the book was called The Science of Getting Rich, and then even then the author said that he got that information from way back from the Hindu mythology and the Hindu religion. So anyway, the idea was the blog that I wrote, and then the name of the internet radio or podcast that we do is called Cultivating the Garden of Suggestion. And the idea there was the same thing, is that like in our minds, we are constantly cultivating different let's say, plants, right? One could be a deadly poison called nightshade, like Earl Nightingale talks about in his recording called The Strangest Secret. And or corn, right? Corn is nutritious, and nightshade or belladonna is poisonous. And so it's which one are we feeding? Which one are we giving the nutrients and the care and attention to? We can choose to grow one, the food or the poison. And this is very similar again to the internet theory of mind. You know, we're a lot more like programmable machines than people care to admit, and the problem with people not accepting how easily programmable we are is that then they allow themselves to be programmed by external message units, by external programmers, by the external programs that they're allowing to get past their filters. And so the idea here is, like, imagine that evil wolf or that bad wolf or the belladonna, the nightshade. Imagine they're like little robots that need to get power in order to work, right? Actually, even all of them, whether it be the bad wolf, the good wolf, the poison, or the food. We can also imagine them like robots, like our behavior. Our behavior is controlled, right? And so what we're doing is when we have any particular stimulus coming in, any information, any scenario, any scene or whatever, it's like a button being pushed to turn on the power. But then there's also a switch that routes that power to where it goes. Does it go to the evil wolf or to the good wolf? Does it go to the food or does it go to the poison? And our neurons work this way. But the interesting thing about our neurons is that we have an even better macro analogy to look at this from the standpoint of going to the gym, for example. You know, you go to the gym, you start working on your muscles, the muscles get stronger, sometimes they get bigger, right? They become more efficient at doing the job. And this is how our nervous system works. This is neuroplasticity. You know, the more we do something, the easier it is for it to get that signal to fire up those muscles. That's why it becomes more efficient. That's why the muscles do the job more efficiently. That's what power is. Sometimes the muscles don't necessarily get bigger, they just become more efficient at being used, at being worked, and so they become stronger without necessarily becoming bigger, because things that we can't see, like how much blood flow they're getting, the different types of nutrients that are getting to them, and so on and so forth. And so it's the same thing with how we type in the information and what behavior we're going to activate, what emotion is going to go along with that behavior. You know, it's interesting, and I'm going off on some tangents here because these are always a work in progress for me, and I'm attempting to put together my thesis. But it's very interesting that, for example, like a martial artist, someone who's training in martial arts, you could be practicing a technique or going to the gym and lifting weights, and at first when you're doing it you might not feel very confident, but you do the movements, and then as you go along doing the movements you become more confident, and until finally you get so confident at doing that you're just in like a state of calm or serenity, and you go through all of those different stages of, you know, calm and serenity is the final outcome, where before you might have been nervous or you might have been apprehensive. And in either case, you weren't fully confident. But then you move through those different stages until you're serene, until it's just kind of running in the background. Or like a fighter, you know, they're practicing these movements, they're sparring, and they're nervous, and they're not sure of themselves, and as they go along, they become more and more confident, and they start doing competitions. And at first in the competition they're not so confident, but then as they go on and on, it becomes sort of like a second nature. And even though there are some nerves every time you do step into the ring, it definitely becomes a completely different animal, so to speak, a different wolf that's being turned on when you're in the competition, when you're in the heat of the battle. And we want to start thinking about that. It's like, yeah, we can program the muscles in our behavior to do certain things, and that's certainly one place that a lot of us want to get to, is that we want to start actually training ourselves to have different responses rather than different reactions. And martial arts and going to the gym and things like that are really great analogies for how our behavior works. It's really the same way, and with the added part of the emotions and the feelings that go along with it. Because for every situation that comes up in our life, you know, we have default reactions that we go to, where once in our lives, there were ways that we reacted to things that ensured our survival. That's the job of our subconscious mind, is to ensure our survival, to make sure that we get through this life. And it's going to keep on defaulting to certain reactions as long as that's getting the best results. We're staying alive. And so the thing that we have to learn how to do is to get more options. I think I actually wrote that down somewhere. Is that I'm also thinking about the options theory of the mind. I think I wrote the options theory. You know, because the fewer options that we have, we're always going to default to the option that ensured our survival before. And so what we really actually need to do also is to start training new responses, so we're not just reacting as we did from some old thing that's now outdated. Sort of like that whole idea again, like the map is not the territory. You know, I living out here in China, I mean, there's so much construction and so many things changing so fast that I constantly have to update my internal maps in my mind, because the landmarks are changing and the scenery is changing, macro and micro. I mean, so many things are changing so quickly that I go through the same neighborhoods 1 month later and everything looks completely different because new stuff is built up around there. And so we constantly have to update our maps to get through life and to get through things that we're doing. But, you know, we do have like these default responses that we fall back on. And sometimes they're not always the best, so we have to update them for the present time. For the current moment, we have to update our responses and our maps, because they're not always going to be the appropriate responses. They might be similar, but they're not always the appropriate responses. And so we have to learn how to install different options through training. And we do mental training through imagination. It's one of the wonderful things why I love working with actors and working in acting. You know, all the world's a stage and we're but players playing our parts. This is also one of the great things about how we can actually create the best type of scenarios for our minds, are by rehearsing in imagination the way that we want to respond to when different buttons get pushed, to different stimulation, to different information that comes in, to different attacks. We want to always be training ourselves to have the best responses. And everything, I mean, gosh, so many different ways this is said. Practice makes perfect, and on and on. I'm going to be doing some more upgrades again to this internet theory of mind and more about how we respond and react, but the better we become to understand the way that our minds operate, at least from a theoretical standpoint, and getting the results that we want, we'll be better and better at being the masters of our own lives.